The official story was progress. South Vietnam, 1962. The Strategic Hamlet Program was supposed to fence peasants in, keep guerrillas out, and turn the countryside loyal by paperwork and bamboo. By 1964, the records already showed the thing had failed. They kept selling it anyway. I started with No Dinh Diem and his brother No Dinh New, the men at the center. Diem wore the state like a pressed collar. New ran nerves and patronage out of Saigon. Their answer to rural war came stamped, numbered, and pushed downhill. Then there was Sir Robert Thompson, the British counterinsurgency man from Malaya. His name clung to memoranda like tobacco smoke. Advisors cited him when they needed theory. Theory traveled first class. Villagers traveled under guard with their rice tied in sacks. American hands were all through the file. Roger Hilsman at state, MAG officers in the field, embassy staff drafting cables under fans that barely moved the heat. One memo praised momentum. Another, from the same week, admitted hamlets existed only as targets on a provincial chart. The ground mattered. Mekong Delta mud swallowed fence posts and patrol routes alike. In the Central Highlands, distances were long and roads wet soft after rain. A hamlet ringed on paper looked solid in Saigon. In the dark, it was a ditch and a prayer. I kept coming back to Apback and the province roads around Mytho. Wet paddies, banana groves, narrow dikes with no cover. The government could announce secured zones by noon. By night, cadres slipped through hedges and spoke softly in kitchens lit by fish oil lamps. Saigon sold the program from offices that smelled of carbon paper and stale sweat. Out in the villages, relocation meant torn ancestral ground, hurried moats, bamboo palisades cut green, and watchtowers built by men who never asked for them. Coercion leaves a shape on everything. On my desk sat a strategic Hamlet evaluation sheet, corners curled, coffee ring near the staple. Categories ran down the page: completed, armed, defended, politically reliable. The record says secure. The record lies. In the margins, one district advisor wrote, vulnerable after sunset. Next came a black and white photograph from Binh Duong, a fresh palisade, a gate, children barefoot in dust. Behind them, no depth to the defenses, no cleared field of fire, no sign of stores. It looked finished from 30 feet. Closer in, it looked hurried. I read witness statements from province teams. Village chiefs reported missing funds, stolen cement, militia rifles without ammunition. And families moved twice in one season. Short fragments, then the longer sentence that explained them. Completed hamlet abandoned, fencing cut, local guards absent, tax collection resumed by insurgents. There was a map with colored pins pressed into South Vietnam like a rash. Green for complete, yellow for pending, red for contested. Green multiplied too fast. Numbers climbed cleaner than any war ever does. That's the part that doesn't add up. The official version came clean and hard. Strategic hamlets would separate the rural population from the Viet Cong, provide security, and extend Saigon's authority, village by village. Officials said temporary disruption would lead to permanent control. Reports climbed upward. Optimism climbed with them. Washington bought the shape of it, expanding defended populations and an administrative triumph in the countryside. Statistics became their own shelter. If enough hamlets were marked complete, the war could be framed as manageable. Cold paper, warm lies. Even after the Buddhist crisis and the Diem regime's narrowing grip, the language stayed polished. Some reports admitted uneven execution. Few admitted collapse. After Diem fell in November 1963, officials blamed instability for later setbacks, as if the structure had been sound before the roof caved. By early 1964, better surveys cut through the fog. Many so-called strategic hamlets had been overrun, infiltrated, deserted, or never properly built. The official explanation shifted. Poor implementation, political turmoil, local corruption. The concept itself stayed protected like a witness behind glass. Then the cracks widened. Pentagon papers, embassy cables, and later histories lined up in bad light. Field officers had raised alarms early. Villagers resented forced labor and relocation. Traditional ties to land were severed. Security units were thin, predatory, or gone. No amount of tidy phrasing fixed that. One province report chilled me more than the rest. A district listed most hamlets as complete, then noted that night control belonged elsewhere. Day belonged to Saigon, night belonged to the insurgents. Gone, no trace of state authority once the sun dropped behind the tree line. Funding bled on the way down. Materials disappeared. Local officials inflated counts to please superiors. Hamlet chiefs feared reporting failure because failure invited punishment. Success became compulsory language. Every loose end is a story someone tried to bury. In this file, the language did the burying. Then there were the villagers themselves. Testimony gathered later described resentment at fences that trapped residents more effectively than infiltrators. Some hamlets were placed far from fields or graves. Some families slipped out. Others stayed and passed information to whichever side would still be there tomorrow. Alternate theories grew out of the wreckage. One held that the program failed because Saigon treated rural security as administration instead of politics. Another said the whole design imported lessons from Malaya into a country with different land patterns, loyalties, religion,
and enemy organization. Same diagram. Wrong war.
I found another line in the file. The program's real purpose may have been statistical theater for Washington as much as security for villagers. Numbers traveled fast. Bamboo did not. A completed hamlet count looked good in a briefing book even when the gate hung crooked and the militia had no rounds. A harder theory stayed with me. The state never had the legitimacy to make enclosure feel like protection. In contested villages,
A fence built by distant authority could read like occupation. Counterinsurgency manuals called for civic trust.
the men on the ground often delivered conscription, taxes, and orders barked at gunpoint. After the program collapsed, it was renamed, absorbed, and rebadged in later pacification efforts. Paperwork changed headings. The countryside kept bleeding. Files went into archives under cleaner titles. The smell of mildew stayed in them. So did the old contradiction between reported security and lived fear. Plenty of people from those villages never got asked twice. Their names blurred into population figures and resettlement counts. The advisors rotated home. The officials moved desks. Maps were redrawn. The file never closes. It just learns how to sit quietly in a box. On cold cases was simple. Systems confess in their paperwork long before men do. This one confessed early. Not in speeches, in crossed-out totals, duplicate categories, hedged field notes, and the dead language of reports trying to make failure look procedural. I never found a clean ending in these records. Only a program announced as salvation, enforced as pressure, and preserved as myth after the villages told a different story. Where would you look next if this were your case? Tell me. The desk stays cold. The questions don't.